Laura Ackerson thinks she's met her soulmate in the form of popular singer-songwriter Grant Hayes. The two fall in love fast, marrying and welcoming two little boys in the space of 2 years. However, Grant is far from Prince Charming, and it's not long before his true colors come out, as he verbally, mentally, and physically abuses Laura. And when Grant meets and falls in love with the wealthy widow Amanda Smith, he hatches a diabolical plan to get Laura out of the way forever. Hello and welcome to The Dark Side of Love. I'm your host, Bianca Sloan, author of suspense novels about the dark side of love. And this week I'm putting a spotlight on part 1 of the case I'm calling A Composition of Murder. Laura Jean Ackerson was born on April 30th, 1984, in tiny, picturesque Hastings, Michigan, to Roger and Brenda Ackerson, the youngest of 6 children. Roger and Brenda separated when Laura was just a toddler and later divorced. In 1996, 12-year-old Laura and her mom relocated to Iowa, where pretty Laura, with her chestnut brown hair, brown eyes, and beautiful smile, would graduate in 2003 from Linville Sully High School in Sully, Iowa, 1 year later than she should have. Laura's older half-brother Jason had moved from Michigan to Raleigh, North Carolina, and after living in several different cities and states, she eventually made her way south to join him. Laura's life has not been an easy one. The contentious divorce between her parents had resulted in her father being estranged from most of his kids, and a chaotic childhood for Laura. She would drift into bad relationships, bad jobs, and so by the time she moved to Raleigh, she was in need of a change, a fresh start. And in late 2006, she thought she'd found it in the form of a popular local musician by the name of Grant Hayes. A native of Raleigh, Grant Ruffin Hayes III was born on April 30th, 1979, so he and Laura had the same birthday. He was born to Patsy and Grant Hayes Jr. He had one sister, Tina, and according to the book Bitter Remains by Diane Fanning, Grant was described as, quote, very docile and a sweet child, who grew up to become a charming young man who had a way with the ladies. No doubt being a guitar player added to his appeal. At the age of 18, Grant married a ballet dancer named Emily Lubbers, and it wasn't long before the relationship swirled down the drain. Emily attended East Carolina University and worked to support them while Grant struggled to find work, with Bitter Remains noting that, quote, Grant always seemed to think he was too good for any of the jobs he was qualified to get. After Grant and Emily divorced, he was diagnosed with depression and bipolar disorder and was prescribed various medications, including lithium, to help manage the symptoms. Grant also decided to self-medicate, turning to cocaine, weed, alcohol, and heroin. Remarkably, throughout this period, Grant managed to attend church regularly, and he also held down a job, even while his drug use escalated to the use of LSD. As noted in Bitter Remains, something shifted in Grant as he, quote, became consumed by delusions of grandeur and often made no sense at all. And it was during this time that Grant and 22-year-old Laura, who doesn't know any of this, of course, crossed paths when he played a gig at the restaurant where she worked as a server. Grant and Laura are immediately smitten with each other, and her father, Roger, told Snapped Killer Couples about his daughter, quote, she was fascinated by him. She was intrigued. She didn't really know how to take him, but she knew she wanted to be with him. Bitter Remains observed that Laura's fractured and tumultuous family background had left her, quote, naive, immature, and vulnerable. According to the Ionia Sentinel Standard, Roger felt his spidey senses tingle when he learned that Grant was a musician, telling the paper, quote, as soon as I heard what he did for a living, I told her to get away from him. WRAL reporter Amanda Lamb said in See No Evil, quote, Laura and Grant fell fast and hard in love. Further noting, it's hard to be in a relationship with a musician who is on the road and gone a lot. However, Laura believed that she and Grant were soulmates, as though they were fated to be together, as evidenced by their shared birthday. And so, on that birthday, April 30th, 2007, the two got married. Laura was 23, Grant 28. Well, once that ring was on Laura's finger and Grant finally had her firmly under his thumb, his real personality came busting out. Despite Laura being his biggest cheerleader, using her marketing skills to get him gigs around town, Grant didn't want a supportive partner, but rather a submissive wife to do all of his bidding, whatever that might be. For example, according to Bitter Remains, he wanted Laura to brag about his penis size and share details of their sex life with his fans, which she refused to do. Grant didn't see the problem, with Bitter Remains noting that he said, quote, "It was obvious to everyone that she was trash because she was a white girl in a relationship with a black man." He tried to brainwash her into believing some of his crazier notions, such as the world ending. I mean, how many times have we heard that? Or that he was a time traveler who hopped from planet to planet, that he wanted to build an empire by having 50 kids with women of all different races. Just really out there stuff. He wanted her to be in a polygamous relationship, something else she refused to do. So in response, Grant cheated. In addition to the cheating and the emotional manipulation, Grant was physically violent, having shot at Laura with a BB gun. There would also be black eyes and busted lips. Because Laura was a naive girl, Grant an older, more experienced man, as Bitter Remains observed, quote, "It was too easy for him to dominate and manipulate the younger and naive woman with low self-esteem." It's not long before Laura finds herself pregnant, and on May 2nd, 2008, she gave birth to their first son, Grant Ruffin Hayes IV. The new baby did nothing to quell Grant's erratic behavior, as he became increasingly controlling and manipulative, trying to cut Laura off from friends and family, calling them bad influences, that they weren't good enough, and claiming that Grant was all that Laura needed. By this point, even Grant's family could see that Grant was just off the rails, as they worried for their daughter-in-law and grandchild. According to Bitter Remains, Grant's father warned Laura that his son was, quote, "the type of man to pimp you out if he needed to." And they even connected Laura with Grant's first wife, Emily, who told her bluntly, quote, "Run. Run as fast as you can." Laura, rightly, takes the warnings seriously and makes moves to file assault charges against her husband, and even reaches out to a local domestic violence shelter. Unfortunately, Laura, still haunted by the impact of divorce on her own childhood, was determined to keep her family together, naively believing things would get better. In fact, things got worse. One night, for example, Grant burst into the baby's room, swinging a bat, ranting and raving, claiming, according to Bitter Remains, that, quote, "the aliens were effing with him." He regularly brought drug dealers around the baby, and once, Laura found Grant sitting with the baby while he watched a violent movie, brushing off Laura's attempts to take the baby out of the room by claiming he knew what was best for his son. He got mad that Laura had secretly maintained a relationship with her friend Heidi Schumacher after he had, quote, "forbidden her from seeing Heidi." As noted in Bitter Remains, he warned both women, quote, "I am powerful, and I have enough friends that I could have you both killed, and no one will know what happened to you. So don't F with me." Laura had started to realize that Grant was not going to change, and that the longer she stuck around, the more chance there was of something catastrophic happening to her or the baby. She began to make plans to head north to see her father in Michigan. However, before she could do so, she found out that she was pregnant, giving birth to her and Grant's second son on August the 3rd, 2009. Grant decreed their second son would be named Gentle, after him. Yes, you heard that right. In an interview on his website, Grant said that he named both of his sons after him because Grant, obviously, and Gentle because that's the kind of person that he was. Gentle. To paraphrase the late, great Rick James, delusion is a hell of a drug. So now with 2 kids in the mix, Grant is feeling the pressure more and more to make money and be a good provider. Blockbuster success with his music had continued to elude him. He often played gigs around town and made zip for his efforts. Grant's friend Mark said in Bitter Remains that his friend seemed as though he was, quote, 2 steps behind the guy who got the prize. Mark's view is that Grant was lazy, that he wasn't willing to put in the sweat equity to get to the top. Grant apparently started to realize this because he decided it was time to make a change, having been told that St. John in the Virgin Islands is perfect for his brand of music. So the family makes the move. St. John proves to be the tonic that Grant's finances need, and finally, the money is rolling in. While Grant is basking in his newfound success, Laura is miserable. Grant sleeps all day, plays those bars and nightclubs all night. His cocaine use goes through the roof. He's oblivious to his kids, the youngest of which was born with kidney issues. He expects Laura to cater to him and his musician friends at all hours of the day and night. Laura has reached her breaking point, and she takes the two boys and flees back to North Carolina, moving into a rental house that her in-laws own. Grant stays behind on the island, but by early 2010, he decides to return stateside. However, he's not headed to North Carolina to reunite with his family. He's on his way to New York City in pursuit of his new infatuation, a woman by the name of Amanda Smith. Amanda is born in 1972 in Taft, Texas, a haven of cotton fields, oil and gas, and lovingly referred to as, quote, the friendliest cotton pick in town in Texas. Amanda, the youngest of two sisters and a brother, has a mother who, if the gossip is to be believed, had upwards of 9 husbands, including a particularly vile man who was a power plant employee, and his job meant that the family constantly moved from one small town to the next, each one more miserable than the last. The unrelenting drudgery and instability spurred Amanda to dream of a better life for herself, and in her quest to make that happen, she got engaged at the age of 16 to her 20-year-old truck driver boyfriend in 1987. 2 years later, she gave birth to her daughter, Shay, and by the time she was 20, Amanda was a divorcee. Amanda's marriage to her second husband, an attorney named Ron Adamson, met the same fate as her first marriage, and after some hard-scrabble years as a single mother with little formal education, Amanda's long-held dreams of meeting Mr. Right finally came true when she was introduced to 39-year-old entrepreneur Nikki Smith. 14 years older than Amanda, Nikki came from a family of cotton farmers and had become an incredibly successful and wealthy businessman. The couple married on March 19, 1998, and virtually overnight, all of Amanda's financial worries vanished with Nikki as the breadwinner. By all accounts, Amanda and Nikki, along with her daughter Shay, were a happy family, and Amanda finally had the security and stability she had yearned for her entire life. A freak diving accident shattered Amanda's perfect world when during Memorial Day weekend in 2000, her husband dove into what turned out to be a shallow creek and broke his neck. He would later die from his injuries, leaving Amanda a wealthy widow. Amanda decides to set a new course for her life and moves to New York City to become an actress, eventually landing bit parts in such TV shows as The Sopranos, Game of Thrones, Dexter, The O.C., and the movie The Stepford Wives. However, she's not setting the acting world on fire and realizes that she needs to get practical. So she gets her real estate license, but she's not happy with that. Then she takes on managing a day spa, but she doesn't like that either. So in need of some R&R, Amanda headed to St. John for a vacation, deciding to relocate there permanently and eventually opening an art supply store. And it's not long before she falls under the spell of Grant Hayes. As reporter Amanda Lamb said in Snapped Killer Couples, there was, quote, an instant connection between the lonely Amanda and the charming Grant, who's playing a gig at the local Parrot Club. WRAL reporter Chad Flowers told Snapped Killer Couples that Amanda, quote, became infatuated with him, with Amanda Lamb commenting that, quote, they both had these big personalities in a way, and a lot of charisma, and a lot of creativity, and so it was kind of like kismet. In order to get closer to Grant, Amanda asks him to teach her how to play guitar, and it's not long before the couple are choosing love lessons over music lessons. They get hot and heavy fast, and of course, Grant doesn't tell her that he's married with 2 kids. But what does he tell her? Well, according to Bitter Remains, he says that he used to date Norah Jones, that he was a stockbroker who'd made $1 million, and that he toured with Jack Johnson. He did none of those things. However, Amanda is in love, and after returning to New York City, Grant finagles his way into moving in with her. And at that point, he finally does come clean about his family, painting Laura as a nut job and capable of taking care of their kids. Big red flag. From this point on, the red flags are flying pretty fast and furious, which Amanda ignores virtually all of them. Like when Grant recorded a song in front of her called Broomstick Rider that he had written about Laura, in which he rhapsodizes about killing the mother of his children. According to Bitter Remains, Amanda believes that this is just Grant's way of blowing off steam. He's expressing himself. Okay. Meanwhile, Grant tells Laura, who by now knows that her husband had begun to have an affair with Amanda while they were living in St. John. Grant tells Laura that Amanda is an investor and that he has to sleep with her in order to keep her happy and keep the money coming in, like a good investment does. He also tells Laura that he wants their oldest son to visit him in New York so that he can be part of a Baby Gap commercial. This was not true. Laura's first instinct was no, but Grant went to work on her. And against the urgent warning of her friend Heidi, Laura agrees to it. Predictably, Grant keeps the boy longer than he and Laura had agreed to, essentially kidnapping him. And this is when things start to get really ugly between the two. Laura files to get Grant to return her son to her, and his response is to send her a plane ticket telling her that she can come to New York to get her son, but she has to drop the lawsuit against him. When she refuses, he cancels the ticket. Grant then contacts an attorney in North Carolina and declares that Laura is using his checking account to subscribe to a website for women in search of sugar daddies, that she was a prostitute, and that he had contacted the FBI about her. My goodness. Laura did cop to posting some inappropriate content online, but nothing like what Grant was claiming. In the meantime, he still had not returned the little boy to Laura. He had, as the saying goes, other fish to fry, because on April 10th, 2010, he and Amanda, along with her daughter, Shay, and little Grant, head to Las Vegas so that Grant and Amanda can get married. Well, this seems like a neat trick, doesn't it? Because Grant is still married to Laura, so now he's a bigamist, right? Right? No. Because as it turns out, according to Bitter Remains, Grant sends a picture from the ceremony to Laura, accompanied by a message that he and Laura aren't married because he never actually signed the paperwork. What in the F? A disbelieving Laura pulls out her marriage certificate and discovers that indeed, Grant had never signed it. They weren't married, never had been. Unbelievable. Finally, at the end of April, Grant decides to make his grand return to North Carolina so that his son can celebrate his birthday with his parents. As noted in Bitter Remains, he informs his parents that he'll invite Laura so long as she promised to, quote, not make a scene. He continues maneuvering through the court system, using it to his advantage in order to get over on Laura and prove that she is an unfit mother. He tells the court that Laura was posting Craigslist ads looking for someone to live with her at no cost. Grant's attorney intimating that Laura plans to trade sex for a place to live. He also basically claims that Laura is a lunatic with no ability to control herself, much less two little boys. Basically saying she has no business parenting these little boys and that he should be given full custody. Now, I'm not sure why, what happened, but Laura was not, for whatever reason, given an opportunity to appear in court to defend herself against the accusations. So without anybody's word but Grant's, the court gives him full temporary custody. The court also determines that Laura and Grant be evaluated by a forensic psychologist to determine who would be the better parent in order to help decide who should eventually be awarded permanent custody. Laura gets weekend visitation and immediately starts to work on turning her life around in order to regain custody of her boys. She moves out of the house that she had been renting from Grant's parents and gets a place in nearby Kenton, fixing up the second bedroom for the boys when they visit. She takes them to the park, rents them new toys to play with each weekend, and does arts and crafts with them. She also gets a steady job working at a health food store and takes classes at the local community college with the ultimate goal of becoming a teacher or opening a daycare. As a side gig, Laura and her friend Siobhan Mathis start a restaurant marketing business, and the two work diligently to build their client base. She also attends church every Sunday, taking the boys with her. As reporter Amanda Lamb said in See No Evil, quote, Laura was intent on turning her life around. She was intent on being a good mother. As part of her fight to regain custody, Laura begins to keep a very detailed log of every interaction with Grant and Amanda and of the time that she spends with the boys. As time went on, the relationship between Laura and Amanda became increasingly strained, with Amanda prone to calling Laura, quote, psycho crazy. As WRAL reported, Laura detailed that Amanda said, quote, she told me that she was responsible for my kids now because I'm psycho crazy. I'm certain that Grant has given her the scenario that I'm wacko and that he needs her to help him protect the kids from me. She further wrote, quote, Grant has gotten Amanda so worked up toward me that instead of now giving me a report on the kids, she looks at me with disdain. Laura is also worried that Grant and Amanda were sabotaging her phone time with the kids, as the kids are sometimes eating dinner when she calls, and overall not encouraging them to talk to her, saying that Grant and Amanda made her feel, quote, irrelevant. They act as though I don't exist. I have done nothing to Amanda, but to them, I am psycho crazy. It is so discouraging to deal with them with my children. But there is a light at the end of this incredibly dark tunnel. On May 17, 2011, after months of evaluations, tests, visits, the psychologist delivers her report with her recommendations for permanent custody of Grant and Gentle. In short, she didn't find any evidence that Laura was, quote, psycho crazy, and recommended some one-on-one coaching to help her become more confident. The report found that Grant was mentally ill, and she suspected severe substance abuse issues. In short, she thought it was, quote, inappropriate for him to have full custody and expressed concern that Grant and Amanda were trying to, quote, obliterate Laura. Her ultimate recommendation was shared custody, and Laura's attorney believes that she had an excellent shot at full permanent custody. Laura is ecstatic. In the meantime, though, she had to keep towing the line and playing nice with Amanda and Grant. No easy feat. By now, Amanda was pregnant and Grant was back on the road pursuing his dreams of music stardom. The couple had even talked about moving to Nashville to bolster Grant's career. The final hearing to determine custody was scheduled for August 15, 2011, and Laura was feeling confident that she was going to prevail. But then, on Wednesday, July 13, 2011, Laura gets a call that will change her life forever. Next week, on part 2 of A Composition of Murder, Laura has no idea she's about to walk into a deadly trap. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of The Dark Side of Love. I am your host, Bianca Sloan, and show your love for The Dark Side of Love by visiting thedarksideoflove.com for show notes and transcripts. While you're there, sign up for my newsletter to be notified about new episodes, and you can also find a link to my Patreon page where you can access bonus material and other fun stuff. Learn more about my suspense novels about the dark side of love by visiting biancasloan.com. Thanks for hanging out with me, and join me next time for another tale of love gone wrong. I'll see you on the dark side.